The summer sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the sprawling garden of Elon Musk's sprawling mansion. It was a typical day, one of many that seemed to blur together in the constant whirlpool of work, deadlines, and family life. Elon had always been a man of extremes. His life was filled with rocket launches, groundbreaking projects, and cutting-edge technology. But as much as he had revolutionized industries, there was something that remained elusive: balance. This particular afternoon, however, things took an unexpected turn. Elon was walking through the garden, as he often did to clear his mind. The soft buzz of bees collecting nectar filled the air, and the scent of fresh earth mingled with the green vibrancy of the plants. It was peaceful, a rare moment in his typically chaotic life. He hadn't planned on staying long, there was always something more pressing to attend to, but something made him pause. It was then that he saw him. Xaea-12, his son, sitting alone on a bench near the edge of the garden. His body was slouched, his face buried in his hands, his shoulders shaking. It wasn't like the boy to show such emotion so openly. Elon's heart skipped a beat, a pang of worry rising in his chest. He took a few tentative steps toward his son, unsure of what he was walking into. X. Elon called softly, the name leaving his lips with an almost hesitant tremor. He hadn't expected to find his son in such distress. "Hey, buddy, what's wrong?" The boy didn't respond right away. His body continued to shake, his sobs muffled by his hands. Elon stood there for a moment, frozen in place, unsure of what to do. His mind was racing with questions, but none of them seemed to make sense. Was he sick? Had something happened at school? Or was it something else entirely? As Elon knelt down next to his son, the boy finally looked up, his eyes red from crying. The sight of his son's tear-streaked face hit Elon like a punch to the stomach. Xaea-12 was always so composed, so calm for his age, that seeing him in such a vulnerable state was a shock. It felt like a crack had formed in the foundation of their relationship. "Dad." Xaea-12 choked, his voice trembling with emotion. "I don't know if you care anymore." Elon's breath caught in his throat. The words landed like a blow, and for a moment, he couldn't speak. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. What did his son mean? Was this about something he had said or done? His mind spun with the possibilities. "What do you mean, son?" Elon asked gently, his voice softer now, trying to hide the panic creeping into his chest. He wanted to reassure his son, but he had no idea what was causing the pain in the first place. Xaea-12 wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, his small face contorted with sadness. "You're always so busy, Dad. You don't have time for me anymore. You're always on the phone or working on one of your projects. I'm just here. Alone." Elon's heart dropped as the words sank in. He had been so consumed by work, by the next big thing, the next goal to conquer, that he hadn't realized the toll it was taking on his family. The late nights, the endless meetings, the travel, it had all been for the greater good, right? To build something bigger than himself, something that would change the world. But at what cost? The boy's words echoed in his mind, a painful reminder that success and progress in one area of life didn't automatically translate to success in another. Elon had always prided himself on his work ethic, his ability to push boundaries and innovate, but now he was faced with a harsh truth. His son, the person who mattered more than anything in the world, felt abandoned. Left behind in the wake of his father's ambition. Elon reached out, placing a hand on Xaea-12's shoulder. "I'm sorry, son," he said, his voice thick with regret. "I didn't realize. I've been so caught up in everything else, I forgot what really matters." He swallowed hard, fighting the lump in his throat. "You matter. You always matter. I promise I'm going to do better." Xaea-12 didn't say anything for a long time. He simply looked up at his father, his eyes searching for sincerity. Elon could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He had built companies that sent rockets into space, but now, as he sat there with his son, he felt small and helpless. Could he fix this? Could he repair the rift that had formed between them without even realizing it? Do you really mean it? XAEA-12 asked quietly, his voice still tinged with uncertainty. I do, Elon replied, his tone firm but gentle. I promise, we'll work on this together. You and me, okay? XAEA-12 nodded, a small but hopeful smile tugging at the corner of his lips. For the first time in what felt like a long while, there was a flicker of connection between them, a fragile thread of trust that Elon was determined to rebuild. Thanks, Dad, XAEA-12 whispered, his voice breaking the stillness of the moment. Elon sat there with his son, the two of them surrounded by the quiet hum of the garden. The sun continued to sink lower in the sky, but for the first time in a long while, Elon felt a sense of clarity. The work, the inventions, the dreams of the future, they were all important, yes. But they meant nothing if he didn't have his family by his side. As they sat in silence, Elon made a silent vow to himself. No matter how hard it was, no matter how many distractions tried to pull him away, he would be there for XAEA-12. He would be present. He would be the father his son needed, even if it meant making sacrifices in other parts of his life. But little did he know, this was only the beginning. The challenges ahead would be greater than he could ever have imagined, and the lessons he would learn would shape not only his future but also the future of his family. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The quiet of the garden seemed to envelop them both, but it was a different kind of quiet now, one filled with possibilities, with hope, and with the promise of a father's love. Elon Musk had always been a man of grand ambitions. From a young age, he was driven by an insatiable curiosity and a desire to push the boundaries of what was possible. Born in Pretoria, South Africa, he was a quiet child, often lost in books and daydreams. He'd spend hours imagining a future where humanity wasn't confined to Earth. He wanted to build rockets, change the world, and, above all, leave a legacy that would inspire future generations. But growing up in a household marked by conflict left its scars. His parents, Errol and May Musk, had a tumultuous relationship. His father, a successful engineer, was a stern and often distant figure. Elon's relationship with him was strained at best. His mother, May, was a model and dietitian, but she too was often distant, preoccupied with her own career. The home was filled with tension, and young Elon often sought refuge in his own thoughts, dreaming of a life far removed from the challenges at home. The instability in his childhood shaped Elon's perception of the world. It also instilled in him a drive for success that he carried into adulthood. He left South Africa for Canada and eventually moved to the US to attend the University of Pennsylvania. There, his mind buzzed with ideas that would lead him to create companies that would change the course of history: Zip2, PayPal, Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, and the Boring Company. Elon's ambition, however, often came at a personal cost. His career took precedence over most other aspects of his life, and his relationship suffered because of it. In his younger years, Elon had been married twice. His first marriage was to Justine Wilson, a Canadian author. The two had met while Elon was still in college, and they quickly married after Elon sold PayPal to eBay in 2002. Together, they had 5 children, but tragically, their first son, Nevada, passed away at just 10 weeks old from sudden infant death syndrome, SIDS. This loss was a devastating blow to their marriage, and despite the birth of their other children, Justine and Elon eventually separated in 2008. The end of that marriage marked a turning point for Elon. He threw himself even deeper into his work, burying himself in his businesses. But his next relationships proved no easier. His second marriage to actress Tallulah Riley was marked by a similar pattern: initial passion, followed by a slow but steady disconnection as Elon focused on his ventures. They married in 2010, divorced in 2012, only to remarry again in 2013 before divorcing for good in 2016. And then there was Grimes, the artist who would later become the mother of his son, XAEA-12. Their relationship had been unexpected, drawing attention from the public and media, but it wasn't without its difficulties. Grimes, a successful musician and creative mind, often clashed with Elon's high-stress, high-pressure lifestyle. Yet despite these differences, their connection remained, and they had a son together, a boy who was now sitting in the garden, crying because his father had become more of a ghost in his life than a present, engaged parent. Elon had always prided himself on his work ethic and his ability to balance the demands of multiple companies. However, looking back, he realized that he had made many sacrifices in the pursuit of success, sacrifices that affected not only his marriages but also his children. He had been so focused on creating a legacy that he had forgotten the importance of building relationships. The truth, as hard as it was to accept, was that success didn't matter if you didn't have the people you loved beside you. And that was what hit him hardest now. His son, XAEA-12, was living proof of the toll his relentless ambition had taken on his family. Elon had always been driven to build something for the future, something that would transcend time. But in doing so, he had lost sight of the very thing that mattered most, being there for his family in the present. The reality of his situation hit him like a cold wave. He had spent so much of his life trying to change the world, but now he was faced with the reality that his own world, the one with his children, the ones who depended on him, was crumbling. XAEA-12's words had opened his eyes to something he had been too blinded to see. He couldn't keep running after the next big thing if it meant losing the people he cared about the most. Elon leaned back in his chair, his hands pressed against his forehead as he tried to process the weight of everything. He knew he couldn't turn back time, but he also understood that he had to make changes. He had to be a better father. He had to figure out how to balance his career with his responsibilities as a parent. But how? How could he possibly step away from the driving force that had shaped his entire life, the one that had fueled his companies, his dreams, and his sense of self-worth? The question seemed insurmountable. His mind flashed to the countless hours spent designing rockets at SpaceX, the sleepless nights brainstorming with the engineers at Tesla, the endless meetings with investors. There was always something to do. Always something that had to be finished. Yet here he was, sitting in the quiet of his garden, surrounded by the soft hum of nature, and all he could think about was his son. He wasn't sure if he was capable of changing his ways, if he could still be the father XAEA-12 needed and wanted. But one thing was certain, the path forward would require more than just business acumen. It would require him to look inward, to confront the emotional barriers that had long kept him from truly connecting with his family. As Elon sat there, his mind raced, and he realized that the next steps in his journey were not about conquering the next frontier in space or revolutionizing the car industry. They were about healing the relationship with his son and finding a way to balance the demands of his extraordinary career with the needs of his family. And that was the hardest challenge he had ever faced. The morning after the garden moment, Elon woke with a heaviness in his chest that was hard to shake. He had slept poorly, if at all, his mind looping over the words his son had spoken. "I don't know if you care anymore." That sentence haunted him, echoing louder than the roar of any SpaceX launch. He sat on the edge of his bed in the dark, staring at nothing in particular, letting the early Los Angeles sun creep across the hardwood floor. For years, he had faced near-impossible deadlines, engineered game-changing technologies, and stared bankruptcy in the face without flinching. But none of that prepared him for what it felt like to realize his own child felt forgotten. Grimes had taken XAEA-12 to her studio that morning, giving Elon some space, but that space only gave him more time to reflect, and not in a comfortable way. He opened his calendar out of habit, the digital schedule packed wall-to-wall, executive meetings at Tesla, a design review for the new rocket engine at SpaceX, a Neuralink board update, followed by a late-night pitch to investors in Tokyo. Every hour accounted for. Not a minute for family. Elon stared at the screen, a sick feeling building in his gut. What kind of father has to book time to be with his child? He closed the laptop. Later that day, during a meeting at the Tesla Design Center in Hawthorne, he couldn't focus. His lead designer was talking animatedly about a new aerodynamic improvement, but Elon's thoughts kept drifting. He found himself watching the engineers, most of them young, driven, eyes lit with purpose, and wondering how many of them had kids waiting at home. How many of them had missed dinner last night? Missed a bedtime story? How many of them, like him, thought they had time, until suddenly they didn't? The room fell quiet. Elon, one of the team members asked cautiously. Did you want us to run the prototype for the quarter-mile test? Elon blinked, disoriented. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead. He realized in that moment just how distracted he'd become. His edge, his relentless clarity of vision, was slipping. The emotional toll of that garden conversation was bleeding into his professional life. Back home that evening, he tried to do something different. He cancelled a call with a London investor and instead asked XAEA-12 if he wanted to build a Lego rocket together. The boy looked skeptical at first, as if unsure whether to trust this sudden gesture. But after a beat, he nodded and quietly went to grab the box. They sat on the floor in the living room, surrounded by piles of colorful bricks. Elon hadn't done this in years. Not like this. The last time he remembered playing Legos without distraction, he'd still been living in the Bel Air mansion, before he sold all his houses, before the world felt like it was speeding past him at light speed. For the first few minutes, it felt awkward. Elon fumbled with the instructions, which his son quickly corrected him on. But soon, as the small rocket began to take shape, they both started talking, about nothing big, just favorite colors, planets, space movies. It wasn't much, but it was something. Still, beneath the laughter and the clicks of plastic bricks, tension remained. Dad, XAEA-12 said suddenly, looking up from the base of the rocket. Do you love work more than us? Elon froze, a Lego thruster half snapped into place in his hand. No, he said, almost too quickly. Then he paused. I love you. More than anything. Then why are you gone all the time? The question stung. Not because it wasn't fair, it was, but because it was honest. Brutally so. Elon felt a familiar defense mechanism flare up. I'm building a future for you. I'm making the world better. But he swallowed those words. They weren't enough anymore. I've been too focused on the wrong things, Elon admitted. And I didn't realize how much I was missing here. That's my fault. Not yours. XAEA-12 looked down again, quietly assembling the landing gear of the toy rocket. You can't build a rocket to fix that, he said softly. Elon felt that line hit harder than any boardroom criticism, any failed launch. No, he agreed. I can't. The rest of the night passed with quiet conversation and gentle laughter. It was the first time in months they'd stayed up late together without screens, without distractions. But Elon knew this wasn't the resolution, it was the start of a deeper reckoning. The next day brought more complications. A board member at Neuralink confronted Elon about his distracted performance on a recent call. We need your head in the game, the man said bluntly. You're Elon Musk, not a guy who forgets deadlines. Elon didn't snap back. Instead, he stared at the speaker for a long moment before answering. Maybe it's time I stop being that Elon. The room fell silent. But the truth was, he didn't know who he needed to become yet. The transition wouldn't be clean or easy. There were cracks forming in the foundation of his life, and for the first time, he was willing to look at them. And those cracks were about to widen. That weekend, a journalist leaked a private email Elon had sent to his executive team titled, "What if I took a month off?" It spread like wildfire. Speculation exploded online, investors panicked, stock dropped, Reddit threads theorized everything from health issues to secret Mars missions. But Elon didn't care. For the first time in years, he found himself staring at a screen and choosing not to engage. He looked out the window at the garden where it all started, the place where his son's tears shattered the illusion that everything was fine. And as the conflict rose both inside and around him, Elon knew one thing. This was only the beginning. It started with a decision no one saw coming. On a cool Monday morning, just before the press conference scheduled to unveil Tesla's next-gen autonomous system, Elon walked into the boardroom at Tesla headquarters, wearing a black t-shirt, jeans, and a look that immediately unsettled his executives. He set down his phone, took a breath, and simply said, "I'm stepping away." The room froze. You could feel the tension stretch like a high-voltage cable. No one moved. No one spoke. Then came the questions, fast, sharp, panicked. What do you mean? For how long? Is this a health issue? Is the company in trouble? Elon raised his hand, calming the wave. Tesla isn't in trouble. Neither is SpaceX, or Neuralink. But I am. He paused, then added, my son needs me. And I need him. So I'm taking time, real time, to be a father. It wasn't a resignation. It was a recalibration. He was appointing interim leads across each company, people he trusted, many of whom had been with him for years. He'd stay involved in big-picture strategy, but the day-to-day grind, the back-to-back-to-back meetings, the overnight code reviews and 2 a.m. engineering brainstorms, they were done. For now. That same day, news outlets exploded. Elon Musk steps back to focus on family. The headlines ranged from supportive to skeptical to downright insulting. Stock prices dipped, rebounded, then dipped again. Twitter turned into a battlefield of opinions. But Elon didn't check Twitter that day. Instead, he was at home, eating cereal with XAEA-12 while building a cardboard Mars colony in the living room. This wasn't just about time, it was about presence. And that presence would soon be tested in ways he didn't expect. A few days into his sabbatical, Elon proposed something spontaneous. He and XAEA-12 would take a road trip. No security detail, no entourage, no personal chef. Just the two of them, a Tesla Cybertruck, and the open road. Grimes was hesitant at first, but eventually agreed. As long as you don't end up in Wyoming without food again, she joked, referencing a wild SpaceX camping story he once told. The trip began in California, moving up through Oregon, Washington, into Canada. Elon avoided the highways, choosing backroads and small towns. They stopped at diners, gas stations, museums, places Elon hadn't seen since his pre-billionaire days. It was awkward at first. Elon, a man used to satellite meetings and Martian colonization strategies, now found himself trying to explain why a soda costs $2.75 or how to fold a motel blanket. But slowly, that awkwardness gave way to something more profound, connection. One night, they camped along a lake in British Columbia. Elon tried to start a fire from scratch, failing spectacularly, until XAEA-12 took over using YouTube tutorials saved offline. I thought you could do anything, the boy said, half teasing, half curious. Elon laughed. I can't start fires. I just build rockets. Later that night, as they lay in their sleeping bags staring at a vast, star-drenched sky, Elon finally asked the question that had been gnawing at him since the garden. What's the thing that hurts you the most? The one thing I didn't see. There was a long pause. Then XAEA-12 whispered, sometimes I think you love saving the world more than saving me. Elon didn't respond right away. The stars blurred slightly in his vision. Not from the cold. From the truth. I've failed you in ways I didn't even realize, he finally said. But I'm here now. And I'll keep being here. That moment under the stars became a turning point. Not dramatic. Not loud. But quietly monumental. A father and son, one known to the world, the other just beginning his story, finding a language between them that didn't involve boardrooms or code. Just time. Honesty. Space, not the kind with rockets, but the kind between people that only love can cross. But even as they grew closer, challenges began to emerge. On the road, Elon was recognized. A lot. People would stop him at gas stations, in grocery stores, even mid-bite in roadside cafes. Some were kind, asking for autographs or selfies. Others were aggressive, questioning his decision to abandon his post. At a coffee shop in northern Idaho, a man confronted him. "So what's the deal, Musk? You finally got bored of trying to play God, or what?" Elon smiled politely. "Just taking time to be a dad." The man sneered. "Must be nice to do that after screwing up half the world's industries." XAEA-12 clenched his fists. Elon placed a gentle hand on his son's arm. "Come on," he said calmly. "Some people just don't understand." Back in the truck, XAEA-12 was fuming. "Why do people hate you so much?" Elon stared out at the road for a long moment. "Because when you try to change the world, not everyone wants it to change." "Do you regret it?" the boy asked. Elon shook his head. "No. But I regret not being there for you while I did it." They drove in silence for a while. Then, softly, XAEA-12 said, "I'm glad you're here now." Back home 2 weeks later, things began to shift. Elon started keeping a journal. Not about tech, not about Mars. About fatherhood. Thoughts, fears, moments he didn't want to forget. He wrote every night after putting XAEA-12 to bed. It became a new kind of engineering, an emotional blueprint for the kind of man he wanted to be. He also began making phone calls, to his older children, to Justine, to Riley. Apologizing, asking to reconnect, to rebuild. Some conversations went well. Others didn't. But he didn't give up. His companies, meanwhile, continued. Tesla delivered vehicles. SpaceX launched a satellite. Neuralink posted a research update. The world kept spinning without him at the helm 24/7. And that realization? It was both terrifying and freeing. By the end of the month, Elon wasn't just different, he was becoming someone new. Still imperfect, still intense, still dreaming bigger than most humans dare. But also more grounded. More present. He wasn't ready to go back to full-time work. Not yet. But what he didn't know was that a new emotional climax was coming, something that would test everything he'd built so far on this journey. And it would begin with a single, unexpected phone call. It was a rainy Thursday afternoon in Los Angeles, rare and oddly symbolic. The sky was gray, the windows of Elon's minimalist home streaked with raindrops. XAEA-12 was in the living room, curled up with a book about quantum physics, his new obsession. Elon sat nearby with a cup of black coffee, scribbling in his journal, reflecting on the past few weeks. He felt lighter. For the first time in what felt like years, he wasn't rushing. No boardroom marathons. No SpaceX launch countdowns. Just quiet, just connection. He had managed to slow the machine of his life down, even if just a little. That's when his phone rang. It was Justine. They hadn't spoken much since his sabbatical began, apart from a few brief texts checking in about the twins. Her name glowing on the screen immediately sent a ripple of anxiety through him. Something in his gut told him this wasn't a casual call. "Hey," Elon answered, trying to sound calm. There was a pause. A long one. "Elon," Justine's voice was shaking. "You need to come. It's Xavier. He left." Elon blinked. "What do you mean?" "He left home. Took his stuff. Didn't say where he was going. He sent a note, says he doesn't want to be Elon Musk's son anymore." Elon's world spun. It wasn't just the words. It was the finality in her tone. The kind of cold reality that doesn't allow for denial. He cut off his phone. I've called all his friends. Nothing, Justine added, panic now cracking through her words. I don't know what to do. Elon stood, his heart pounding. I'll find him. Xavier, their oldest surviving son, who now went by Jenna, since coming out as a transgender woman, had long been distant from Elon. The transition had sparked a complicated and strange shift in their relationship. Elon had fumbled the situation, often trying to intellectualize things that required emotional support instead. He hadn't meant to hurt her. But he had. And now, that damage had reached a tipping point. Within the hour, Elon was in the Cybertruck, rain lashing against the windshield as he drove through LA like a man possessed. He wasn't sure where he was going at first. He just knew he needed to find her. To fix this. To be there. As the hours passed, and the search expanded, through contacts, online threads, old friends, he realized something chilling. Jenna didn't want to be found. She had erased her presence from his life in a way even he, with all his tech, couldn't trace. It wasn't a disappearance. It was a rejection. That night, Elon sat in a cheap motel on the outskirts of Glendale. He hadn't told anyone where he was. He needed space, real space, to process. He opened his laptop and read the message Jenna had left. I'm done living in the shadow of a man who doesn't see me. You love your empire, your ambition, your vision of the future, but not me. Not who I really am. Stop looking. I'm finally free. Elon didn't cry. He couldn't. The tears just wouldn't come. Instead, he stared at the ceiling, feeling the weight of every moment he missed. Every chance to listen. Every opportunity to say, I love you no matter what. This was no business problem. No tech glitch to patch. No algorithm to debug. This was a father failing his child. And for once, he couldn't fix it. Back at home, XAEA-12 noticed the change immediately. His father was quieter. He ate less. He stared out the window for hours at a time. The sparkle of their road trip, the newfound closeness, it all seemed to dim. Is it because of Jenna? The boy finally asked. Elon looked over, surprised. You know. I saw the news. And Mom was crying on the phone. Elon hesitated. She doesn't want to talk to me. I think I lost her. XAEA-12 put his Lego rocket down. Are you going to stop trying? That question hit Elon harder than anything else had that day. No, he said quietly. I'm not. Later that week, Elon did something he hadn't done in over a decade. He wrote a letter by hand. He poured his heart out on paper, not as Elon Musk, the entrepreneur, but as a father. He didn't try to defend his choices. He didn't try to explain away the hurt. He just told the truth. I've made mistakes. I didn't listen when you needed me to. I tried to fit you into my version of what a child should be, instead of loving the version you were trying to become. I'm sorry, Jenna. Not just for the distance, but for making you feel unseen. Wherever you are, I hope you know, you're loved. Unconditionally. Always. He didn't know if she'd ever read it. But he sent it anyway. And then, he waited. As days turned into weeks, Elon became a different kind of present. He began seeing a family therapist. Not for show, but because he realized he couldn't do this alone. He involved XAEA-12 in the process too, not just for bonding, but to learn how to be a better father. Not by instinct. But by effort. He reconnected with Justine, not romantically, but as co-parents, as allies. They began texting more. Sharing updates. Sharing concern. He reached out to his twins, Griffin and Damien, asking to meet for dinner. They were cautious, distant, but intrigued. Small steps. Not solutions. But signs of hope. The climax wasn't just Jenna's departure. It was Elon seeing himself clearly for the first time. Not as a genius. Not as a billionaire. But as a broken man, trying to put the pieces back together. And those pieces were scattered across rocket hangars, courtrooms, and quiet family dinners he never attended. But now, he was picking them up. One by one. The house was quieter now. Not the peaceful kind of quiet. The kind that comes after a storm, where everything looks normal on the surface but you know the foundation has shifted. Elon walked the halls of his home like a man returning to a place he used to know. The walls hadn't changed, but he had. It had been a month since Jenna left. No word. No return call. Not even a bounced email. But something had changed. Elon hadn't stopped trying. And quietly, beneath the ache, that had started to change him. He was still seeing the family therapist, twice a week now. At first, he'd sat in silence, arms crossed, offering only nods or business metaphors to describe emotions. But slowly, the armor began to crack. The therapist, a sharp and calm woman named Dr. Moreno, didn't treat him like a tech icon. She treated him like what he was, a father trying to do better. "You can't undo pain," she said during one session. "But you can outlove it." That line stayed with him. It became his quiet mantra as he started doing the small, hard things. One evening, Elon sat down at the kitchen table with XAEA 12, helping him with a math assignment. Halfway through, the boy asked, "Do you think Jenna hates us?" Elon paused. He hadn't expected that question, but it was honest, and he owed honesty in return. "I think Jenna's hurting. And when you're hurt that long, sometimes love doesn't feel safe anymore." "Are you still her dad?" he asked. Elon nodded, the answer arriving in his chest before it reached his lips. "Always." They sat quietly after that, pencils tapping, numbers adding up on paper while a deeper equation played out in Elon's heart: love plus action equals healing. Eventually. He hoped. The next week, something unexpected happened. Elon received a text. Not from Jenna. From Justine. "She's okay. She's safe. And she read your letter." There was no follow-up. No next step. But that message hit like a sunrise cracking through storm clouds. It wasn't forgiveness. But it was something. He stared at the screen for a long time before responding. "Thank you. Please let her know I'm still here. No matter how long it takes." Reinvigorated, Elon started making time a new priority, not just clearing it from his calendar, but using it intentionally. He scheduled a weekly dinner with his older twins. The first few were awkward. Griffin barely looked up from his phone, and Damien mostly talked about school. But over time, things softened. One night, they even asked him about SpaceX. "Why Mars?" Griffin had asked, chewing on a breadstick. "Because it's there," Elon answered. "And because every species needs a backup drive." Damien grinned. "Even dads?" Elon smiled. "Especially dads." He and Grimes also began communicating better, not just as co-parents, but as people who shared history, laughter, and a very precocious little boy. "Weird seeing you slow down," she told him one day while dropping XAEA 12 off after a weekend visit. "I didn't slow down," Elon replied. "I just stopped sprinting away from the people I love." Grimes raised an eyebrow. That from the guy who once tried to schedule dinner between Mars orbit projections? He chuckled. "I still think I can predict planetary rotation better than my own emotions." They both laughed. And for the first time in a while, it wasn't awkward. That night, Elon revisited his journal. He wrote, "This journey didn't start with rockets. It started with a cry in the garden. A small sound louder than any launch I've ever heard. And that sound, his sadness, is what finally broke the silence in me. He paused, then added. I don't know when Jenna will speak to me again. I don't know if she'll want me in her life. But she'll always have the choice. And I'll be here. Ready. Spring arrived slowly. The garden, once forgotten and overgrown, was now trimmed and full of new blooms. XAEA-12 had taken an interest in plants, strange for a kid raised around wires and screens. Elon encouraged it. They planted a tree together, an olive tree. A peace tree, the boy said. Elon nodded. For all the things we're still learning to forgive. It became their ritual. Each week, they'd water it together. And as the leaves filled in, so did their relationship. Still fragile. Still growing. But rooted. One afternoon, a package arrived. No return address. Just a simple envelope inside. Elon opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a single sheet of paper. I'm not ready to talk. But I'm reading. Keep writing, if you want. J. It was the smallest of gestures. And it shattered him, in the best way. He didn't cry. But this time, the tears were close. He folded the note, pressed it to his heart, and whispered, "Thank you." That night, as the sun set over Los Angeles and the olive tree cast long shadows on the grass, Elon sat outside with XAEA-12 beside him. You think things will ever be totally fixed? The boy asked. Elon shook his head. No. But I think they'll keep getting better. One page at a time. And somewhere, in another part of the world, a daughter read those pages. Still silent. But maybe, just maybe. Not so far away anymore. It was only a matter of time before the world came knocking. In tech, there's no such thing as truly stepping away. Especially when your name is Elon Musk, a man whose tweets once shifted markets, whose rockets redefined space travel, and whose every move drew headlines faster than any politician or pop star. So when Elon's month-long sabbatical stretched into 2, then almost 3, the pressure started building, from inside and out. The Tesla board sent emails with carefully phrased concern. The SpaceX team requested a brief alignment session. Neuralink hinted that funding might slip if Elon didn't personally appear at the upcoming investor summit in Zurich. And yet, Elon hesitated. Not because he didn't care. But because, for the first time, he had reasons to stay still. The olive tree in the backyard had grown a few new branches. XAEA-12 watered it every afternoon like it was a sacred ritual. Elon often joined him, watching the boy's quiet concentration. One day, while kneeling beside the tree, the boy asked, "Are you going back to work?" Elon gave a half-smile. "I am working. I just stopped living only for it. But everyone online says you're hiding." That one cut deep. Elon looked at the soil for a long time before answering. Sometimes hiding is the only way you figure out what matters. Eventually, though, he did agree to one event, a single live interview on a neutral platform, a podcast called Humans First. It wasn't flashy. No investors in the room. No CEOs. Just an audience of listeners hungry for something real. And this time, Elon didn't show up as the disruptor, the provocateur, or the futurist. He showed up as a dad. "Why now?" the host asked. "Why take this step back at the height of your power?" Elon didn't hesitate. "Because I was losing my family. And I didn't want to win the world and lose the people who matter most." The host blinked. This wasn't the soundbite he expected. "So, what does success look like now?" Elon looked straight at the camera. "Dinner with my son. A text from my daughter. A quiet evening where no one needs to check if I'm too busy to care." The clip went viral. But not for the usual reasons. This time, it wasn't the spectacle. It was the stillness. People weren't used to seeing Musk quiet. Vulnerable. Human. Some called it a PR stunt. Others called it a midlife crisis. But millions? Millions called it relatable. Still, not everyone was rooting for him. A Wall Street analyst posted a scathing thread: Musk's emotional retreat is costing shareholders. We didn't invest in a dad, we invested in a visionary. Another wrote, his downfall has begun. Empathy isn't scalable. The noise was deafening. And for a moment, just a moment, Elon wondered if he had made a mistake. That night, after the interview aired, he sat alone in the backyard, staring at the stars. The ones he used to chase like they held all the answers. XAEA-12 joined him, silently slipping into the chair beside him. They're wrong, you know, the boy said. Elon looked over. Who? The ones online. The ones saying you're weaker now. He smiled, surprised by his son's insight. Why do you think that? Elon asked. XAEA-12 shrugged. Because you're doing the hard thing. And they're scared of hard things that don't come with stock options. Elon laughed softly. That's not bad for a 10-year-old. I'm 10 and a half, the boy corrected with a grin. But the universe wasn't done testing him. 2 days later, during a remote review of a SpaceX launch sequence, one of the engineers hesitated before speaking up. Sir, we found something. A potential fault in the Falcon booster assembly. We think it's from the batch produced while you were out. Elon's stomach dropped. A failure of that scale could ground an entire fleet. And the irony? It happened while he wasn't watching. He flew to Texas the next day. Quietly. No press. No tweets. Not to take back control, but to learn. The booster flaw turned out to be fixable. No lives were at risk. No launches cancelled, just delayed. But still. The whispers started again. Elon isn't focused. Elon's lost his edge. Elon's gone soft. And as he stood alone in the SpaceX hangar, staring up at the belly of a massive Falcon rocket, a familiar thought crept in. Was this all a mistake? But then, his phone buzzed. It was a message from Griffin, one of his twins. Saw the interview. You were right about the stars. Dinner next week? I'll bring the pizza if you bring the stories. Elon stared at the screen. And just like that, the doubt faded. Because some launches aren't measured by countdowns. They're measured in second chances. It started with a message that almost got lost in the clutter. Buried in the noise of thousands of emails, tweets, and unread messages in Elon's ever-expanding inbox, one simple line stood out, not because it was flashy, but because of the name attached to it. From Elon Musk. His father. The man who raised him in South Africa. The man he hadn't spoken to in nearly 7 years. Elon stared at the screen. He could still remember the last conversation. It ended in shouting. Or maybe it just ended in silence. His memory blurred it out. It was easier that way. The message was short. Strange. Vaguely polite. Saw your interview. Thought maybe it's time. I'm in the States. If you're willing. No apology. No explanation. Just an open door. For 2 days, Elon didn't respond. He walked past the message like someone skirting around broken glass barefoot. But it gnawed at him. Not because he missed his father. But because there were too many echoes between them, echoes that scared him. The same drive. The same sharp tongue. The same tendency to go cold when things got too real. And now, as a father himself, as someone clawing his way back from emotional detachment, Elon couldn't stop wondering. Am I just a better funded version of him? He finally replied. 1 hour. Coffee. Public place. I'll pick. The meetup happened 3 days later, at a quiet cafe in Santa Monica overlooking the ocean. Elon arrived early. He sat in a corner booth, ordered coffee, and stared out at the waves, trying to suppress the internal storm building. At exactly 4 p.m., Errol walked in, gray-haired, broad-shouldered, dressed in a tan jacket that looked like it hadn't changed since 1997. He approached the table without hesitation. Elon stood. They didn't hug. Errol sat down. "You look tired." Elon blinked. "You look old." They both chuckled. Briefly. Awkwardly. Then silence. For a while, they talked about safe things, weather, tech, news from Pretoria. But it didn't stay there. Because it couldn't. Errol sipped his coffee and finally said what Elon knew was coming. "You've been busy fixing your kids." Elon tensed. "Trying." Errol leaned forward. "Trying's a luxury. Back then, we didn't try. We survived." Elon stared at him. "Surviving isn't the same as being present. You were there, sure. But not in the way I needed." Errol scoffed. "You think I had time to be soft? We had no money. No help. You got out, didn't you?" "Getting out isn't the same as healing," Elon shot back, sharper than he meant to. Errol's face hardened, but only for a moment. Then came something Elon didn't expect. "I watched the interview, Elon. You were better than me. You are better." It wasn't an apology. But it wasn't sarcasm either. It was the closest thing to real Elon had ever heard from the man. "I never knew how to be warm," Errol admitted. "Didn't get it from my father. Didn't know how to pass it on. Thought if I gave you tools, you'd figure the rest out." Elon looked down, then said quietly, "I built empires with those tools. But not homes." That one hung in the air. And for once, they both let it. Before leaving, Errol put something on the table, a photo. Worn, sun-bleached. Elon picked it up. It was a picture of them on a hike, maybe age 8. Elon had a scraped knee, dirt on his shirt, but a huge grin on his face. His father's hand was on his shoulder. "I wasn't always bad," Errol said softly. "No," Elon admitted. "You just didn't know how to be good in the right ways." They shook hands as they parted. No promises. No, "let's do this again." But for the first time, no hatred, either. And that was enough. Later that night, Elon sat in the garden with XAEA-12 again. The boy was watching ants on a tree trunk, fascinated. "Did you ever talk to your dad about his dad?" he asked, seemingly out of nowhere. Elon was surprised. "No, not really." "Why?" XAEA-12 shrugged. "I think people pass down stuff they don't mean to. Like invisible backpacks." Elon blinked. Invisible backpacks. That metaphor would stay with him for the rest of his life. "I think you're right," he said. "But we don't have to carry them forever." The boy smiled. "We can drop them. Or change what's inside." That weekend, Elon wrote a letter to Jenna again. It said, "I met with my father this week. It didn't fix anything. But it helped me understand where I came from, and where I don't want to end up. Thank you for making me look at my own reflection, even when it hurt. You're teaching me how to be better, even without speaking a word. And I'm still here. Page by page. Tree by tree. Day by day." SpaceX felt different now. Not because it had changed, but because Elon had. The humming of drones, the clanking of metal, the low buzz of engineers hunched over screens, it used to sound like music to him. It still did, in a way. But where he once saw only output and deadlines, he now started to see people. Tired eyes. Frayed nerves. Missed birthdays. One of those sets of tired eyes belonged to Leo Ramirez, a 28-year-old systems engineer Elon had been tracking for over a year. Leo was a rising star, MIT grad, brilliant coder, sharp under pressure. But lately, he'd been slipping. Missed QA checks. Sharp responses in team meetings. Red eyes that screamed, "I haven't slept in 2 days." And there was something else, something in the way Leo always looked like he was running from something invisible. Elon recognized it. Because it looked exactly like him. 10 years ago. The opportunity to reach out came unexpectedly. During a systems calibration review, Elon noticed Leo alone in the back corner of the lab, sitting on a crate, staring at the floor. It was 11:37 p.m. The hangar was almost empty. Elon walked over. Quietly. Leo jumped a little when he looked up. "Sir, I didn't realize." "Not sir," Elon interrupted. "Just Elon." Leo stood. "Sorry. I was reviewing the." "You okay?" Leo paused. Blinked. Looked at him like he was trying to decode a trick question. "I mean, yeah. I'm fine. Just, tired." Elon nodded. Tired is a good mask. But it cracks eventually. Leo didn't say anything. But something in his face shifted. Elon sat down beside him. "You know what I used to do when I was tired," he said. "Work more. Think more. Fix problems I couldn't fix in my personal life by overbuilding in my professional one." Leo exhaled slowly. "Yeah," he finally muttered. "I guess. I'm in that phase too." They talked for an hour. Leo opened up slowly, about his mom, who was in remission after battling cancer. About his brother, who he hadn't spoken to since he missed his graduation. About the pressure of being the first in his family to work at a place like SpaceX and feeling like he had to earn it every day or lose everything. "I don't sleep," he said quietly. "Not really. Just, crash. Then wake up in a panic and keep going." Elon nodded. "You feel like if you stop moving, everything will fall apart." "Exactly. Yeah. That's how you burn out. And sometimes, burn bridges without knowing it." Leo looked away. "My girlfriend left me last week. Said I care more about code than people." Elon stared straight ahead. "I lost my daughter. She doesn't even want my name anymore." Leo looked over. Shocked. "I'm sorry. I didn't know." "No one does. Because for years, I didn't show it mattered." That night became a turning point, not just for Leo, but for Elon, too. He started something quietly the next day. An internal initiative at SpaceX, just for team leads and engineers, the Human Project. No press. No launch event. Just a Slack channel and weekly opt-in circles for people to talk. Really talk. About stress. About home. About being a human behind the code. Leo volunteered to co-lead it. 2 weeks in, the feedback was already rolling in. "I haven't felt seen at work in years. This changed the way I talk to my wife. I finally told my manager I was drowning. And she listened." Elon didn't lead the meetings. He just watched. Sometimes, he messaged encouragement. Other times, he shared a line from his own journal. "Our greatest engineering flaw isn't technical. It's emotional disconnection. And you can't solve it with better code." That weekend, back at home, XAEA-12 was building a model rocket in the living room. "Can we launch it at the park?" he asked, eyes glowing. Elon smiled. "Absolutely. But only if we make the launch crew pancakes first." "Deal." As they flipped pancakes and mapped out the launch angle with a protractor, Elon felt something shift deep inside. It wasn't a big moment. It was a real one. And he didn't miss it this time. That night, he sent another letter to Jenna. I met a young engineer who reminded me of myself. Brilliant. Lost. Afraid to slow down. I tried to help. Not because I had all the answers, but because I finally know what the wrong answers cost. Every time I show up for someone else, I realize I'm still trying to show up for you. One day, I hope that means something. A few days later, he got a reply. Simple. Short. But enough to shake him. I see you trying. That matters. He read that line over and over again. 4 words. But they meant the world. It started with an email titled, "Long time, no launch." Elon nearly deleted it, thinking it was another newsletter or press pitch. But then he saw the sender's name. Tallulah Riley. His ex-wife. Twice. He hadn't heard from her in over a year, no texts, no friendly hellos, no blurry photos from a distant film set. She'd moved on. He thought he had too. But as he stared at the message, his chest pulled tight in a way he hadn't expected. The email read. Saw the human project thing. I'm genuinely proud of you. That's all. Hope you're well. If you're ever in London, let's grab tea, no drama, just 2 time travelers catching up. Elon stared at the screen for 5 full minutes. Tea. Casual. Like their past wasn't littered with legal documents and emotional explosions. Still, he smiled. Because the truth. Tallulah had always been different. They met in London. No cameras. No headlines. Just 2 people at a cafe in Notting Hill, sitting across from each other like the world hadn't changed 6 times since they last touched. You look human, she said, sipping Earl Grey. That's new. You look like you're enjoying not being married to me, he replied with a grin. She laughed. Maybe. Or maybe I just learned to enjoy being me. That hit harder than it should have. 4 hours, they talked. Not about rockets. Not about AI. But about life. Grief. Change. Regret. I saw the interview, she said, voice soft. And the letter to Jenna. I didn't think you'd ever let yourself be that raw. Neither did I, he admitted. But not doing it almost cost me everything. Tallulah nodded slowly. You always gave the world everything. But the people closest to you got whatever was left. Oof. He swallowed. That's fair. There was no venom in her voice. Just truth. And somehow, that was worse. They walked through Hyde Park after tea. It was cool, drizzly. London doing its best London impression. She asked if he was dating anyone. He wasn't. He asked if she was happy. She said yes, finally. But then, just before they parted, she stopped walking. You know, she said, when we were good. We were so good. Elon smiled faintly. Yeah. Until we weren't. I used to think you couldn't love anyone. That maybe you were too wrapped in your mission. And now, he asked. She looked at him. Really looked. I think you just didn't know how to love yourself yet. That night, Elon sat alone in his hotel room, staring at the London skyline. He wasn't broken. But he was bruised. In the right ways. And for the first time, he didn't feel the urge to tweet something cryptic or open a prototype file to numb the ache. He just sat with it. Because he finally knew pain wasn't a weakness, it was an invitation. He called his therapist the next day. I saw Tallulah, he said. Dr. Moreno asked, how did that feel? Like holding a photograph of someone you once were. Familiar, but out of reach. Did you want to go back? He paused. No. But I wanted to say thank you. For staying as long as she did. Would you tell her that? I might. Back in LA, Elon returned to routine, but with a difference. He started waking up before his alarm. Making breakfast with XAEA 12. Actually tasting his coffee. Writing letters he might never send. He also added something new to the Human Project wall at SpaceX, a note that simply read: "Sometimes the love you lost is the love that taught you what love actually means." Leo read it and raised an eyebrow. "Deep day." "Something like that," Elon said with a smirk. That weekend, he received another message from Jenna. Just one sentence. "You're not who you were." "I see that." He didn't reply right away. He let it breathe. Because growth wasn't about chasing anymore. It was about becoming. And piece by piece, moment by moment, he was. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The phone rang just as Elon was finishing a morning coding session on the patio. He glanced at the screen and froze. Jenna Musk. He hadn't seen her name on his caller ID in over a year. Not since the day she blocked his number after their last brutal exchange. The memory was foggy now, but he remembered the tone: cold, final, done. And yet, here she was. Calling. His hands trembled slightly as he answered. "Hello." A pause. Then her voice, calm, even. "Hi, Dad." 2 words. 1 earthquake. Elon stood up instinctively, pacing the edge of the pool without realizing it. "I wasn't sure you'd actually call," he said. "I wasn't either," she replied. The silence that followed felt louder than the words. He tried to say something, anything, but his throat tightened. All the things he'd rehearsed. All the lines he'd imagined saying when this moment finally came, they vanished. Jenna filled the gap. "I read your letters," she said. "All of them?" Elon stopped pacing. "All of them?" he asked, barely above a whisper. "Even the one about the olive tree," she said. "That one almost made me cry. But I didn't." Elon smiled faintly, pain beneath it. "I didn't write them to make you cry. I wrote them to reach you. Even if you never answered." Another pause. "Mom says you've changed. She's seen a version of me that didn't exist before." Jenna let out a slow breath. "I needed time to stop being angry." "I understand." "No, you don't," she snapped. "You think you do. But you don't know what it was like being the daughter of a man the world worshipped, while I barely recognized him at home." Elon said nothing. "You missed my birthdays. You forgot my piano recitals. You were at a launch the night I got into Stanford. And then you sent a text with a rocket emoji." The ache in her voice wasn't loud, but it was sharp. Elon's eyes stung. "I was afraid you'd never tell me this. And I deserved every word." "I didn't call to fight," she said, a little softer now. "I just wanted you to hear me. One time. As a whole person." "You always were," he replied. "I just wasn't looking hard enough." There was another long silence. Then Elon said, "I've been trying to learn how to show up. Not just as a genius. Or a problem solver. But as a dad." Jenna was quiet for a moment. "It's not a title. It's a relationship." "I know," he said. "And I know I broke it." She didn't argue. But she didn't hang up either. "I'm not ready to forgive everything," she admitted. "And I'm not ready to have lunch or go to therapy together." "Okay. But I'm not blocking your number anymore." His breath caught. "I'll take that," he said, smiling through glassy eyes. "It means more than you know." Later that day, XAEA-12 asked why Elon looked like he cried without crying. He laughed. "Because sometimes, we cry on the inside. Especially when someone gives us a second chance that we weren't sure we'd ever get. Was it about Jenna? Elon nodded. X looked down. Do you miss her? Every single day. Do you think she'll come home? Elon didn't answer right away. Then finally said, I think home is something you build slowly. One brick at a time. I just laid the first one. That evening, he sent one last letter, not as a hope for a response, but as a mark of the moment. Today, you let me hear your voice. And that was enough. I'll never stop building toward you, no matter how long it takes. I'll be here. Not perfect. But present. He didn't sign it, Dad. He just signed it. Elon. There are people in your life who see the entire story, even the parts you try to rewrite. For Elon, that person had always been May Musk. Model. Nutritionist. Single mother of 3. Survivor of abuse. The woman who raised Elon in a one-bedroom apartment after leaving his father, juggling 3 jobs, and teaching him resilience before he even understood the word. And now, she was sitting in his kitchen, sipping black coffee with almond milk, watching him pace like a nervous intern. I heard Jenna called, she said casually, flipping through a recipe book she'd brought from her last trip to France. Elon froze. News travels fast. She told me, May replied, looking up. Not because she wanted advice. Just, to let me know. I think it shook her more than she expected. Elon lowered himself into the chair across from her. It shook me too. Are you okay? She asked. I don't know, he admitted. I'm not used to feeling this, cracked open. May smiled gently. That's where the light gets in. They sat in silence for a while, the kind of silence only a mother and son can sit in, heavy, but not uncomfortable. Then May placed the book down and leaned forward. You know, when you were a boy, she said, you used to build things to escape. Paper rockets. Radio transmitters. Even that giant tunnel you dug behind the house. I remember. Dad thought I was trying to dig to Australia. You were trying to disappear, she corrected. From the shouting. From the cold house. From him. Elon looked away. I tried to protect you, she added, voice softening. But I wasn't always strong enough. Or free enough. And I've lived with that guilt. He looked up, surprised. You never told me that. I didn't want you to carry it. Elon nodded slowly. But maybe if we talked about it, I wouldn't have carried everything alone. They sat in the sunroom, memories thick in the air. May studied her son, not the entrepreneur or billionaire, but the man who was learning to be vulnerable in his 50s. You're not your father, she said. You worry you are. But you're not. I feel him in me sometimes, Elon admitted. The shutdowns. The sharpness. The ambition that devours everything. And yet here you are. Sitting with your mother. Talking about feelings. He laughed. Wild, right? May smirked. Miracles happen. Later that afternoon, May pulled out an envelope. It was old, creased, yellowed around the edges. She handed it to Elon. What's this? A letter, she said. One you wrote me when you were 16. You left it on the kitchen counter before running off to the university lab. He opened it slowly. The handwriting was messy but unmistakably his. It read. Mom, one day I'll make rockets. Maybe even leave Earth. But if I do, it won't be because I hate this place, it'll be because I want to come back and make it better. I'll take you to Mars if I figure it out. Thanks for believing in me when no one else did. Love, Elon. His throat tightened. I forgot I wrote this, he whispered. I didn't, she replied. Because even back then, I knew your mind was bigger than most. But I also worried your heart wouldn't keep up. And now, he asked. She reached out and squeezed his hand. Now I see a man fighting to let it catch up. And I've never been prouder. That night, Elon called XAEA-12 into the living room. Want to see something old? Like, a fossil? The boy asked, wide-eyed. Older, Elon joked, pulling out the letter. It's from me. When I was 16. They read it together. Slowly. Line by line. When they finished, X said, so you've always wanted to fix things? Yeah. I just didn't always know what needed fixing. The boy nodded. I think your heart is almost caught up now. Before bed, Elon sat on the back porch with a notebook. He didn't journal often. But tonight, he needed it. He wrote. I saw my mother today. And for the first time in decades, I let her see me, not the image, not the headlines, but the part that still needed her. I realized something I've never said out loud, I want to be a father my kids can come home to. Not just a father who built the future. But one who was there for it. Maybe healing isn't a straight line. But it's a direction. And I'm facing it now. It was the kind of evening Elon dreaded, but knew he couldn't avoid. The SpaceX Gala, an annual event designed to showcase the future of space exploration, innovation, and of course, to celebrate his status as one of the most influential figures of the 21st century. The room was filled with high-powered executives, scientists, engineers, and journalists all gathered in a grand hall at the company's headquarters in Hawthorne, California. Glittering chandeliers illuminated the room, casting soft reflections off of polished glass walls. The air was thick with ambition and champagne. For the past decade, this had been his show, a stage where he could present his ideas to the world with all the fervor and charisma of a showman. His speeches were legendary. His ideas were revolutionary. The press adored him. But tonight? Something was different. Elon stepped out of his car and into the back entrance of the building. He was dressed in his usual black suit, his hair meticulously styled, a sharp contrast to the disheveled man who often slipped away for quiet hours of contemplation with his family. He had been avoiding this event for months, but the pressure to attend, the constant buzzing of staff and advisors, had convinced him that he had to show up. Not just as the CEO of SpaceX. But as Elon Musk, the public figure, the icon, the one they all thought they knew. His assistant, Leo, walked briskly beside him, voice steady. The press is already in place. You're expected to give the opening speech. Elon nodded but didn't respond. Instead, his mind was miles away, back with X in the living room earlier that morning. The boy had looked up at him with those big, wise eyes and asked, "Do you have to go tonight?" He hadn't known how to answer. Inside the gala, the room erupted into applause as Elon entered. His steps were deliberate, his smile practiced. The atmosphere was electric, and yet, his chest tightened with every stride. He was expected to give a speech about the future of humanity, about Mars, about a better tomorrow. But his mind was somewhere else, focused on the family he was trying to rebuild, the relationship with Jenna that was still fragile, the emotional landscape with X that was still evolving, and his unresolved grief for the past. As he made his way to the podium, the spotlight blinded him for a moment, but he stood tall. His gaze swept over the crowd of eager faces, their eyes sparkling with admiration and expectation. But then, as his fingers brushed the mic, something inside him snapped. Instead of launching into his usual inspiring speech about colonizing Mars and humanity's next frontier, Elon did something he never had before. He stepped back from the mic, cleared his throat, and paused. For a moment, the room fell into an uncertain silence. Elon took a deep breath. Tonight, I was supposed to talk about the future. About how we're going to get to Mars and make life multiplanetary. About how space exploration is the next step in human evolution. He looked down at his shoes for a second, then back up at the crowd, his voice quieter now, more personal. But tonight, I'm going to talk about something else. A murmur rippled through the audience. I've spent my life focusing on the future. I've dedicated everything I have to creating a world where we don't just survive, but thrive. But somewhere along the way, I forgot about the most important part of the equation. He paused, feeling his chest tighten, the words coming slower now. I forgot about the people I love. I forgot about the people who need me to be there, not as a visionary, but as a father, a son, a friend. His eyes briefly flickered to the front row, where his mother sat with a proud yet concerned expression on her face. His heart pounded in his chest. I've been building rockets and pushing humanity forward, but I haven't been present for the people who matter most. He swallowed. And that's a failure I'll regret for the rest of my life. The room was silent, except for the soft clink of glasses. It wasn't the speech they expected, but it was the speech he needed to give. Elon didn't know what compelled him to say those words. Maybe it was the years of bottled-up guilt, the countless sleepless nights, or the realization that he was becoming the very thing he feared, someone whose success and vision came at the expense of everything he truly cared about. But standing there, under the bright lights, in front of an audience that expected the usual brilliance, Elon chose vulnerability instead. I don't have all the answers. But I'm trying to be better. I'm trying to be a better version of myself. Not just for this company. But for my family. For my kids. For the people I've hurt. The applause that followed was not what he was used to. It was quieter. Softer. More uncertain. But there was something real in that room now. A recognition that the man standing before them was more than the sum of his inventions. He was human. He was broken, but he was willing to heal. Later, after the event, Elon sat alone in his office. The noise of the gala still echoed faintly in his ears. But it was replaced by the sound of something deeper, a sense of relief. Maybe it wasn't about being the hero of humanity after all. Maybe the greatest legacy he could leave behind was being the father, the man, and the friend he'd neglected for too long. His phone buzzed on the desk. Jenna. He stared at it for a moment before answering. Hi. Hi, Dad, she said softly. I saw the speech. You did? Yeah. And I'm proud of you, she said. For the first time, it felt like you were talking to me. Not to a crowd, not to the world. Just, to me. He smiled, tears prickling at the corners of his eyes. Thanks, he said. I think I'm learning. And for the first time in years, he wasn't ashamed to say that. The days after the gala were not what Elon expected. He had prepared himself for ridicule, for backlash, for the usual swarm of media attacks. But what he hadn't anticipated was the intensity of the response, not just from the public, but from the very people who had been by his side for years. It was the morning after the gala when the first wave of texts and emails arrived. As soon as he opened his phone, the screen was flooded with messages, some from trusted colleagues, others from journalists, and a few from old friends he hadn't spoken to in years. Elon, what the hell was that? One read from a SpaceX executive. Another, this isn't the man we've built this company around. And one from an anonymous number, I hope you didn't just lose everything with that speech. His hands trembled as he scrolled, the words feeling like punches to the gut. He had opened up, exposed his raw, unfiltered self, and now the consequences were crashing in like a wave he couldn't escape. But then, there was a text from XAEA-12, his son, who had been at home when he gave the speech. I watched the gala with Mom. I think you're getting better. I think you're starting to get it. Elon stared at the message for a long moment, his heart swelling and breaking all at once. That text meant more to him than any award or accolade. It was the first real acknowledgement from his son that the man who was his father wasn't just some distant figurehead but was becoming someone human, someone he could depend on. But the world outside wasn't so kind. The next day, the media was buzzing with headlines. Some were supportive, applauding his honesty, calling it a bold new chapter. Others weren't so generous. Musk's emotional breakdown, a cry for help or just a PR stunt. The billionaire who lost his way, is Elon Musk too human for space? It was a familiar dance. A man who had made headlines for his successes now found himself grappling with a much darker narrative. Was he still the genius who could change the world, or was he just another tired billionaire in need of a reset? Elon paced around his office, his mind buzzing with conflicting emotions. His team had been equally divided. Some were supportive, reaching out to assure him that they believed in his vision and leadership. But others were unsettled. They didn't know how to reconcile the vision of Elon Musk, the man who launched rockets and created electric cars, with the version they had just seen, a man struggling with his own personal demons. Leo, his assistant, knocked on the door before stepping inside. Elon looked up, expecting another round of uncomfortable discussions about the fallout. Elon, Leo began, his tone cautiously neutral, I need to talk to you about the media response. You're going to be under intense scrutiny. People are going to ask whether this speech was real or just a play for sympathy. I know, Elon replied, his voice calm but distant. I expected that. But I needed to say it. For once, I needed to stop pretending everything was fine. People respect you for your vision, Elon. But this is different, Leo continued. I don't know if they'll take you seriously anymore. Elon ran a hand through his hair. I never took myself seriously. I'm just trying to find a balance. A reason to keep pushing forward that's not just about rockets or billions of dollars. Leo didn't answer right away. Instead, he just watched Elon, as if trying to understand the shift he had witnessed. Finally, Leo spoke again, a little softer this time. I just want you to be ready. People might turn their backs on you. You might lose some of your allies. Especially the ones who only saw you as a business machine. I know, Elon said again, feeling the weight of the words more than he'd let on. But maybe that's a good thing. As the week passed, the tension grew. Elon found himself increasingly frustrated by the lack of understanding. He had poured everything into his work, only to realize that his true legacy wasn't the spaceships or the electric cars, it was the people closest to him. It was X, who he wanted to be a present father for, and it was Jenna, who was still uncertain whether he could be a part of her life again. On the weekend, he decided to take a break. Not to escape the fallout, but to step away from it for a moment. He rented a small cabin in the mountains, just outside Los Angeles. No media. No phone calls. No distractions. For the first time in a long time, it was just him, the air, and his thoughts. He walked the rugged trails, reflecting on everything that had led him here. The years spent burying his emotions. The relationships he had neglected. The choices he made that led to this complicated moment. And the truth hit him like a ton of bricks. He couldn't go back to the way things were. Elon sat on a rock, the cool air brushing against his skin. The phone buzzed in his pocket, but he ignored it. His phone wasn't his life. The people he loved, the relationships he was rebuilding, that was his life. When he returned from the cabin, something inside him had shifted. He wasn't ready to face the world in the same way anymore. But he knew he couldn't hide from it either. There was still so much to repair. So much to prove, not just to the world, but to himself. That evening, he called May Musk, who had been checking in with him. Hey, Mom, he said, voice hoarse. Hey, darling, May replied softly. How are you holding up? Elon exhaled deeply. I'm okay. Not great. But okay. It's just. I thought the world was going to be different after I said those things. But now it feels like a weight has been placed on me. And I'm not sure how to carry it. Sweetheart, May said with a tone of understanding, you've been carrying the weight of the world for so long. Maybe it's time you let yourself not carry it for a while. Elon smiled faintly. I think I'm learning how. You are, May said. And you'll keep learning. It's not going to be easy. But you're strong enough to handle it. Elon stared at his reflection in the glass window of his office. The sprawling cityscape of Los Angeles stretched out before him. The lights of the city twinkled beneath a dark sky. It should have felt comforting, the hum of progress, of innovation, of everything that he had worked so tirelessly to build. But instead, it felt hollow. For the past few days, he had found himself caught in an internal tug-of-war between the person he used to be, the visionary, the disruptor, the one who constantly looked toward the future, and the person he was trying to become, the father, the man who wanted more than just achievements to show for his life. The text messages, the interviews, the media blitz, they had all been an overwhelming reminder of how much the world had come to depend on him, how much his work had defined his existence. The past year, particularly after his speech, had felt like an out-of-body experience. He had opened his heart, but the world wasn't ready for that version of him. It was too raw, too real. They wanted the visionary, the dreamer, the billionaire. They didn't know what to do with the man who was willing to be broken, to fail in front of millions. Jenna had been quiet for the past few days as well. She hadn't said much since that night at the gala, and when they had spoken, it was brief. He knew she had reservations. Her walls were still up, and he didn't blame her for it. She had been through so much already, trying to navigate their complicated relationship while also being a mother to their children. But X, his son, his firstborn, was different. The text from X had stuck with him, a balm for his wounded soul. "I think you're getting better. I think you're starting to get it." It had been simple, but it had meant everything. X had seen his struggle. He had seen the cracks that had been hidden from the world. And somehow, that made Elon feel less alone. But the question now remained, could he truly change? It wasn't just about being a better father, or a better partner. It was about being a better human. The intense dedication to his companies, the constant drive to push the boundaries of what was possible, he had sacrificed everything, even himself, in the process. Elon had started this journey by creating businesses that could alter the course of history. But in the end, those businesses had been his way of avoiding the uncomfortable truths about himself. They had given him a purpose, yes, but they had also given him an excuse to avoid the real work that needed to be done, healing the parts of himself that had been fractured by years of neglecting the people he loved. As the days went on, Elon found himself at a crossroads. He had been talking with his team, as he always did. There were talks of new innovations, space travel advancements, new ventures. But each conversation felt more distant. The pressure to deliver on the next big thing, another billion-dollar idea, another leap for humanity, felt suffocating. He hadn't told anyone yet, but in the quiet moments, when he was alone with his thoughts, he knew what needed to happen. The decision had been forming for weeks, but now it felt like the only option. He pulled out his phone and dialed Jenna. The line rang twice before she picked up. "Hi, Elon." "Hey, Jenna," he replied, his voice soft. "How are you?" "Busy." "You know how it is," she answered, the familiar tone of guardedness creeping in. But then, as if sensing the weight of the conversation, her tone softened. "Is everything okay?" "Actually, no," Elon said, taking a deep breath. He felt his palms sweat. "I've been thinking a lot about everything, about work, about us, about X and the kids. I know I've been a mess lately." There was a pause on the other end, and he could almost feel her processing his words. "You don't have to apologize, Elon," she said finally. "You've been under a lot of pressure. We both have." "I know, but it's more than that," he said. "It's not just about work or SpaceX or Tesla. It's about me. About the fact that I've let all of it take over my life, and in doing so, I've lost the people who matter most to me." Jenna was quiet again, and Elon could feel the distance between them. "I don't know what to say," she replied carefully. "I know you're trying. But there's only so much we can do from here, Elon. You've been absent for so long, and I can't just pick up the pieces every time you decide to wake up and try again." "I understand," he said, his voice almost a whisper. But I need you to know. I want to make a change. A real one. I can't keep living like this. Not when I'm missing out on the most important thing. She was quiet, but he could hear the vulnerability in her tone. What are you saying? I'm stepping away, he said, the words feeling both terrifying and liberating. I'm going to take a break from SpaceX, from everything. I need time to rebuild my life, to focus on what's important. There was a long silence, and he could almost feel her processing the enormity of the statement. Finally, she spoke. I didn't expect that, she said slowly. But I think it's exactly what you need. And maybe what we need too. That evening, Elon made another call, this time to his team at SpaceX. I'm stepping down, he announced to them, his voice resolute. I need to focus on my personal life, on my family, and on taking a step back from the pressures of leading this company. The reaction was a mixture of shock, concern, and disbelief. He could hear the uncertainty in their voices. Elon, are you sure? One of his engineers asked. You've built this company. You've led us to this point. What's going to happen to all of us? I don't know yet, Elon admitted. But I can't continue at this pace. I've lost myself in this company, and I've hurt the people I love. That's not something I can live with anymore. In the following weeks, Elon withdrew from the public eye. He stepped back from his executive duties at both SpaceX and Tesla. He spent more time with Jenna, X, and his other children, focusing on rebuilding the relationships he had neglected for far too long. It wasn't easy. There were still difficult conversations, old wounds that hadn't fully healed. But with each passing day, Elon felt a sense of peace growing within him, something he hadn't felt in years. He was no longer the man who chased perfection or tried to change the world through his companies alone. He was the man trying to change himself, the father trying to be there for his kids, the partner trying to rebuild trust. And as for the future, he still wasn't sure. But for the first time, he was okay with that. Elon woke up early that morning, his mind already churning with thoughts of the day ahead. It was the first time in months, perhaps even years, that he felt a strange peace in the air, a sense of quiet after the storm. The pace of his life had slowed significantly since stepping away from his companies, but even now, the weight of his decision felt heavy. His hands still trembled at times, his heart still ached as he processed the magnitude of what he had done. But this was the new reality. Elon Musk was no longer the man who ran two of the world's most innovative companies. He was a father, a partner, someone searching for a way to reconnect with the world around him, not through launches or profits, but through people. Jenna was already in the kitchen when he walked downstairs, the soft hum of a coffee machine filling the room. She was making breakfast for the kids, her movements deliberate and calm. For the first time in a long time, Elon wasn't overwhelmed by the sight of her. There was no pressure, no agenda, just the simple reality of their shared life. She looked up as he entered, and for the first time in a long time, their eyes met without the usual veil of discomfort or distance. "Morning," she said softly. "Morning," Elon replied, giving her a small smile. It was genuine, but it didn't yet feel like everything was fixed. There was still work to be done, but this was the first step. He sat at the table as the kids ran past, laughing and chasing each other. It was almost surreal to watch them, seeing the world through their eyes, the simplicity of their joy, the freedom in their laughter. For too long, he had been focused on things that didn't matter, things that pulled him away from this. That day, Elon spent time with X in the garden, teaching him how to tinker with an old car engine in the corner of the yard. X had always been curious about how things worked, and while Elon had been too busy to show him before, now there was no rush. "Can we make it go faster?" X asked, his face lighting up with excitement as he held a wrench in his hand. Elon chuckled, a sound that felt like a relief in itself. "Not yet, but we can make it work better." They spent the next few hours working side by side, with X asking endless questions and Elon answering as best as he could, reveling in the joy of being present for his son. For once, it wasn't about speed, innovation, or what the next big breakthrough would be, it was just about the moment. Later that evening, when the kids had gone to bed, Elon sat with Jenna on the porch, the cool breeze of the evening gently caressing their faces. The sky was clear, and the stars were bright above them. "I've been thinking," Elon said, breaking the comfortable silence between them. "About everything. About how much I've been absent, not just for you, but for myself. I don't want to keep doing that. I can't. I don't want to wake up one day and realize I missed it all." Jenna turned toward him, her gaze steady but unreadable. "It's not going to be easy, you know. Being here, not just for the kids, but for us. You can't just walk away from everything you've built without consequences." Elon nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "I know. But I want to try, Jenna. I want to build something with you, with all of you, that's not based on work or ambition. I want to build something that's real. Something that lasts." She didn't reply immediately, and for a long time, they sat in silence, the only sound being the occasional rustle of leaves in the wind. "Okay," she said softly. "We can try." The next few weeks were a blur of adjustments. Elon's life had become something completely different from what he was used to. The pressure to constantly innovate, to always be working on something big, had dissipated. But in its place, he faced something even more challenging, learning to navigate the rhythms of everyday life, to be present in ways he had never allowed himself before. He spent his mornings with the kids, teaching them how to fix things, how to build, how to create. He took them on hikes, to the beach, on little adventures, all the while savoring the moments he had once missed. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't always easy. But it was real. There were still moments of doubt. There were still days when he found himself tempted by the allure of the business world, when he thought about the massive potential of SpaceX and Tesla and the legacies he had built. The ambition that had fueled his every decision for so long still pulsed within him. But now, it wasn't the driving force. It wasn't the only thing that mattered. Elon found himself slowly reworking his identity, not as the tech mogul, but as a man who was learning to live in the present. One afternoon, while sitting in his office, Elon received a call from Gwynne Shotwell, the president of SpaceX. She was one of the few people who had known him for years, and who had stood by him through thick and thin. The line crackled for a moment before she spoke. "Elon, I just wanted to check in," Gwynne began, her voice warm but tinged with concern. "How are you holding up? We're all behind you, you know. If you ever want to come back to the company, we'd be here to support you. But you need to know, it's going to be different. Things have changed." Elon let out a long sigh, leaning back in his chair. He had been expecting this conversation, but it didn't make it any easier. "I'm doing okay, Gwynne. Better than okay, actually. I'm just not sure if I'm ready to come back." There was a pause on the other end. "You know, you've always been the one who shaped the direction of this company. The visionary. But we understand, Elon. This is your life, too. And if you need to step away for a while, we'll keep going." Elon smiled, a weight lifting from his chest. "I appreciate that. I just need some time to figure out who I am outside of all this." That evening, after another long day of spending time with his children and trying to piece his life back together, Elon sat with his laptop. He opened up an old draft of a speech he had written years ago but had never delivered. It was about space exploration, about the future of humanity, about what he hoped to achieve. But as he read it, something struck him: this wasn't the future he wanted anymore. Elon nodded. Her words hit him harder than he expected. She was right. The companies were his crown jewels, the markers of his success. But they had come at a cost. A cost that was now staring him in the face: his family, his health, and his own sense of fulfillment. That afternoon, Elon took a walk in the garden with X. His son had been distant since the news of his decision to step away from his companies, but today he seemed more relaxed. Elon had been trying to re-establish his connection with him, and slowly, X was warming up. "Dad," X said as they strolled under the shade of the oak trees, "do you think I'll be as good at this stuff as you?" Elon smiled, his heart swelling. "You already are. Better than me at some things, I think." X laughed, but there was still a hint of doubt in his voice. "But you're Elon Musk. You've done all these amazing things. What if I don't live up to that?" Elon stopped walking and knelt down to his son's level. "You don't have to live up to anything, X. You just have to be yourself. Whatever you choose to do, I'll be proud of you. You don't have to carry the weight of my legacy." "But you're my dad," X said, looking up at him with those wide, questioning eyes. "And, you've done so much. Don't you think I should follow in your footsteps?" Elon felt a pang in his chest, and for the first time in a long time, he truly saw the weight he had placed on his children's shoulders. They didn't just look up to him, they felt the pressure of his success, his failures, and his relentless drive. "Son," he said softly, "if you want to follow your own path, that's what matters. Don't feel like you have to take on the things I've done. You'll have your own journey. And I'll be there for you, every step of the way." X nodded, and for the first time in a while, Elon felt like he had said the right thing. That evening, after the kids had gone to bed, Elon sat down at his desk in the quiet of the house. He stared at the pile of papers in front of him, old plans, blueprints for new projects, and documents from SpaceX and Tesla that had once consumed him. He hadn't touched them since stepping away, but now they seemed like relics from another life. It wasn't that he regretted what he had built, he didn't. But as he sat there, holding the papers in his hands, he realized that his true legacy was not something that could be measured in financial terms or technological advancements. It was the people he had touched, the lives he had shaped, and the lessons he had learned along the way. He closed his eyes and thought back to the early days of SpaceX and Tesla, to the years of struggle, the sacrifices, the relentless pursuit of perfection. It had all seemed so important at the time, but now, it felt distant. There was a knock at the door. "Come in," Elon said, not looking up. The future wasn't about rockets or colonies on Mars. It was about connection, healing, and growth. It was about showing up for the people he loved, not just the ones who admired him from a distance. The speech he'd once thought would define his legacy suddenly felt irrelevant. Elon closed the laptop and stood up, looking out the window at the sprawling world before him. The future, he realized, wasn't about just moving forward with no regard for what he left behind. It was about taking the time to truly see the world around him, and finally, after all these years, to be a part of it. Elon woke early the next morning, as he had for years. The habit was ingrained, even if his life had changed drastically over the past few months. He could hear the sounds of his kids in the house, their laughter rising through the walls, and for the first time in a long while, it felt right. He didn't need to rush to the office, to board a private jet or to prepare for a meeting with world leaders. The mornings were his again. But as much as he tried to embrace this quieter existence, something pulled at him, a nagging sense of unfinished business. The weight of his legacy was not easily dismissed. It was a shadow, ever present in his life, always reminding him of what he had built and what he had sacrificed to get there. He walked downstairs, still deep in thought, and found Jenna already in the kitchen, preparing breakfast. The smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, and the sound of sizzling eggs and bacon was almost comforting. "Good morning," he said, walking toward the table, his eyes lingering on her face. She hadn't changed much since they first met, still the woman who challenged him, the woman who had seen through his bravado to the vulnerable side beneath. "Good morning," she replied, offering him a smile that was more of an acknowledgement than anything else. She had learned, over time, how to read him. And right now, she could tell something was on his mind. "What's on your mind?" she asked, the question gentle but direct. Elon took a deep breath, running a hand through his hair. "I've been thinking about my legacy," he said, the words coming out heavier than he had intended. Jenna paused, looking up at him. You mean the companies? Yeah, he replied. SpaceX. Tesla. All of it. I've spent so many years trying to shape the future, trying to push humanity forward. But I don't know if it's enough. Not anymore. Jenna set down the spatula and walked over to him, placing a hand on his arm. Elon, what you've done, it's extraordinary. You've changed the world. But, you can't keep running from the fact that your legacy isn't just about what you built. It's about the people you've hurt along the way. Including yourself. Jenna stepped into the room, her presence calming. She sat down beside him, not speaking at first, just allowing the silence to settle around them. You're thinking about going back, aren't you? She asked quietly, her voice almost a whisper. Elon looked at her, the truth hanging in the air. I don't know, he said honestly. I feel like I've left so much unfinished. There's still so much I want to do. But I also feel like I've been running away from the things that matter most. Jenna took his hand in hers, squeezing it gently. You don't have to choose between them, Elon. You've already done more than most people could ever dream of. But you can't let that define you. Not anymore. Elon stared at their intertwined hands, a feeling of clarity washing over him. He didn't need to return to SpaceX or Tesla to prove his worth. He didn't need to keep chasing the dream of changing the world in the way he had before. The world was already changed, and now it was time for him to change, too. The next morning, Elon made another call, this time to Gwynne Shotwell. I've made my decision, Elon said, his voice steady. I'm not coming back to SpaceX. Not in the way you think. I want to remain involved, but in a different capacity. I've done what I needed to do. Now it's time to focus on the future in a different way. There was a long pause on the other end before Gwynne spoke. I understand, Elon. I respect that. You've given us everything, and we'll continue to move forward without you. But know this, we'll always be grateful for what you've done. I'm grateful for what we've done together, Elon replied. But it's time for a new chapter. The weeks following Elon's decision to step away from his companies were marked by a strange sense of calm. At first, it felt like a dream, something impossible, something he had spent years working toward yet never believed he'd actually achieve. The chaotic pace of his previous life, where every day was a race against time, seemed like a distant memory. Now, his mornings were filled with something different, the laughter of his children, the quiet comfort of breakfast shared with Jenna, and the simple joy of being home. It wasn't perfect, nothing ever was, but it was his. Elon was in the living room that afternoon, watching X and his younger sibling, Tosca, run around with a soccer ball in the backyard. Jenna sat beside him, quietly sipping her coffee, a contented smile on her face as she watched the kids. There was peace here, in this little corner of the world, and for the first time in years, it felt like home. The transition hadn't been easy for Elon. There were moments when he felt the pull of the business world, the temptation to jump back into the chaos that had once defined him. But every time that urge arose, he'd look at his children, at Jenna, and he'd remember why he'd made this choice. The world he had built was incredible, yes, but the world they were creating together now, in this house, was even more precious. Jenna turned to him, her expression thoughtful. You're really doing it, aren't you? You're really letting go. Elon nodded, his gaze following X as the boy dribbled the soccer ball, his face alight with joy. I think I have to. For them. For myself. Jenna reached over and placed a hand on his. I know it's not easy, but I can see it. You're here now. With us. And I can feel the change in you. In all of us. Elon turned to look at her, a slow smile spreading across his face. I've been so focused on everything outside of this, everything outside of us, that I didn't realize what I was missing. They sat in silence for a while, watching the kids. Then, Elon spoke again, his voice quieter this time. But what if I've already missed too much? What if I've ruined everything? Jenna's voice was calm but firm as she responded. It's never too late to start over, Elon. You're here now. That's what matters. And we're with you. Every step of the way. Later that evening, Elon found himself alone in the quiet of his study. The house was peaceful, Jenna was reading in the living room, the kids were in bed, but his mind was racing. He sat at his desk, staring at the papers and files that were scattered across the surface. His decision to leave the companies had felt right, but the remnants of his old life, his identity as an entrepreneur, a creator, a visionary, still lingered in the corners of his mind. He opened his laptop and began typing, not sure what he was going to write, just needing to put his thoughts somewhere. As his fingers hovered over the keys, the words began to form. I've spent most of my life pushing toward a goal that I believed would change the world. I chased dreams of Mars, of electric cars, of building something that would leave a mark on humanity's future. And I've achieved many of those dreams. But in the process, I lost sight of something even more important, the people around me, the ones I love. I've realized that success isn't measured in rockets launched or cars sold. It's measured in moments. In time spent with the people who matter most. It's in being present, in showing up, not just in business meetings and product launches, but in the everyday life that I've missed for so long. I've been running for too long, chasing the next big thing. But now, I see that the big thing has always been here. It's in my family, in my children, in the quiet moments that make up a life worth living. And that's where my future lies. Not in rockets or cars, but in the love and connection I share with those closest to me. I'm not abandoning the world I built. I'm not giving up on the vision I once had. But I'm learning to balance it with something just as important, the people who are by my side through it all. I've made mistakes, and I'll continue to make them. But I've learned that the real journey isn't in the stars, it's here, on Earth, with the people who matter the most. Asterisk. Elon closed the laptop, feeling an odd sense of relief. For the first time in years, he wasn't chasing after the next big idea. He wasn't trying to solve the world's problems from a high tower. Instead, he was sitting in the quiet of his own home, acknowledging the truth that had always been right in front of him. It was time to be present. The work he had done at SpaceX and Tesla, his contributions to humanity, would always be a part of him. But he had a new role now. A role as a father, a partner, and a man trying to find meaning beyond success. The next morning, Elon met with Jenna in their home office, where they were beginning to make plans for the future. No longer was he a CEO, driving innovation through endless meetings and decisions. He was learning to be something different, something he hadn't been in years, present. We've talked a lot about the future, Elon said as they sat down at the desk together. But I think it's time we start planning for something different. Something for us. Something that isn't tied to work or legacy. Jenna smiled. You mean something for us? Yeah, Elon said with a small smile. Something that isn't just about my past. Something that's about building a future we can enjoy together. No more distractions. Just us. They spent the rest of the day talking about possibilities, things they'd never had time to explore before. Travel, new hobbies, philanthropic endeavors. Elon was no longer tethered to the idea of changing the world through his businesses. Instead, he was focused on changing his world, one that was grounded in family, love, and presence. Later that evening, while Jenna was preparing dinner, Elon took a walk outside, breathing in the crisp evening air. He looked up at the stars, his thoughts drifting to his past, the goals he had set, the obstacles he had overcome, the dreams he had realized. But now, he was seeing things differently. The future wasn't in the stars anymore. It was here. On Earth. With the people he loved. That night, as the family sat down to dinner, Elon looked around the table at his children and Jenna. For a moment, everything was perfect. The noise, the chatter, the laughter, it all felt real. It felt like home. Elon woke to the soft sound of birdsong drifting through the window, the first rays of sunlight slipping into the room. It was a quiet morning, but his mind was far from still. Even now, despite the decision to step away from SpaceX and Tesla, the past clung to him. He had thought that distance would give him the peace he was searching for, but instead, it had only created a void, a space where old ambitions, doubts, and questions swirled relentlessly. As he walked into the kitchen, he found Jenna preparing breakfast as usual. She was humming softly, a sense of calm in the air, a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside him. "Morning," she said, glancing up from the stove with a smile. "Sleep well?" "Better," Elon answered, though his words didn't match the restless feeling in his chest. "But still, something's missing." Jenna set down the spatula and turned to face him. "What do you mean?" Elon ran a hand through his hair, sitting down at the table. "I thought stepping away from the business world would be enough. I thought I could let go of all the pressure, all the expectations. But every day, I wake up feeling like there's something I'm supposed to be doing, something that calls to me, something I can't escape." Jenna sat down beside him, her hand reaching out to touch his. "You don't have to have all the answers, Elon. You've spent your life solving problems, building things. Maybe now it's time to focus on you, the person, not the creator. It's okay not to know what's next." He nodded slowly, but the weight of the question lingered. What was next? The next few days were filled with reflection, but also a creeping sense of uncertainty. Elon tried to occupy himself with the simple pleasures of home life, helping Jenna with the kids, enjoying the quiet moments that had once seemed foreign. But even as he helped Tosca with her school project or kicked a soccer ball with X, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was somehow fading away. It was as if the world he had spent so many years shaping was slipping through his fingers, and with it, the very sense of identity he had spent a lifetime cultivating. One afternoon, he found himself on a call with Gwynne Shotwell. It had been a few weeks since he made the decision to step back from SpaceX, but the conversation was still fresh in his mind. They had agreed that his involvement would remain, but it wasn't the same. "Gwynne, how are things going over there?" Elon asked, trying to sound casual, but knowing that the words didn't fully match the concern in his heart. "We're moving forward, Elon." "As always," Gwynne replied, her tone professional. "But I won't lie to you, it's strange. The company has grown into something much bigger than any of us could have imagined, and your absence is felt. The team is adjusting. We're all adjusting." Elon felt a pang in his chest. The truth was undeniable, he was no longer in control. The company he had founded, the one that had consumed him for so long, was now larger than him. And in some ways, that felt like a loss. "I just want to make sure that everything continues smoothly," Elon said, trying to mask the discomfort. "I don't want my decision to hold anyone back." Gwynne's response was careful, measured. "You've done your part, Elon. You've given us everything. But it's clear now, SpaceX has its own momentum. And we're all working to keep it going. Don't worry about us." But Elon wasn't sure he could stop worrying. What if, in stepping away, he had done something irrevocable? What if his absence was more of a disruption than he realized? Later that evening, Elon was sitting in the backyard, gazing at the stars above. The night was quiet, and the gentle rustle of the leaves in the breeze was the only sound. He had always been captivated by the stars. As a child, he dreamt of reaching them, of finding a way to push humanity into the future, to colonize Mars and ensure humanity's survival. But now, as he sat there, the stars felt like an unreachable goal, a symbol of everything he had left behind. "Why do I feel like I'm lost in the dark?" he muttered to himself, his words carried off into the night. Just then, X came running toward him, his face lit up by the glow of a nearby lantern. "Hey, Dad, you look like you're thinking deep thoughts," X said, sitting down beside him. Elon smiled, ruffling his son's hair. "Just thinking about everything. About how far I've come, and how far I still have to go." X raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Elon looked down at his son. In that moment it was clear to him, he was the future. Not Mars, not the companies. His children. His family. The legacy he was leaving wasn't just in the work he had done, but in them, in the world he would help shape for them. I guess I've spent my whole life looking up at the stars, X. But now, I'm starting to see that the real journey is here. With you and Mom. The future is different than I imagined. X smiled, his eyes bright with hope. You're still changing the world, Dad. Just, in a different way. Elon felt a lump form in his throat. For the first time in a long time, he felt the weight of his decision lifting. Maybe he wasn't lost after all. Maybe he was just starting to find his way again. The following days were spent in a mixture of reflection and quiet adjustment. Elon continued to work with Gwyn, making sure that his departure from the day-to-day operations of SpaceX wouldn't hinder its progress. But he began to spend more time at home, walking with Jenna, playing with the kids, taking time to reconnect with the world he had been too busy to see. Still, the past haunted him. The lingering echoes of his former self whispered to him at night, reminding him of the things he had yet to finish, the projects he had set aside. But he was beginning to realize something. Perhaps, this new chapter of his life wasn't about finishing anything at all. It was about starting something new, starting with the relationships that truly mattered. A week later, he found himself in a meeting with a group of philanthropists, talking about the future of renewable energy. He was no longer tied to Tesla, but the conversation was still familiar, still connected to the world he had helped shape. As the meeting ended, one of the philanthropists, a woman named Amelia, looked at him with a knowing smile. You know, Elon, she said, you don't have to give up your vision for the future. You just need to find a new way to pursue it. Elon's eyes widened slightly as he considered her words. A new way. Maybe she was right. His work didn't have to be finished. But it had to be done differently. As he left the meeting and walked out into the bright sunlight, something inside him shifted. He wasn't running anymore. He wasn't chasing anything. He was simply walking forward, one step at a time, with his family by his side and a future ahead of him. Elon woke up early that morning, the sun barely peeking over the horizon. The weight of his decision to step away from his companies was still a heavy presence, but it no longer felt like an anchor pulling him under. The previous few weeks had been a whirlwind of reflection and change, and he had come to a realization, perhaps the most important one of all. Success wasn't just about the company. It wasn't about how much money you made, how many projects you launched, or how many milestones you achieved. It wasn't even about leaving a legacy in the traditional sense. For Elon, success was now about balance. About finding meaning in the moments that had once passed him by in the rush of ambition. About creating something more than just technology, about creating a life that was rooted in love, growth, and purpose. That morning, he found himself walking with Jenna through their garden. The air was cool, and the plants around them were beginning to show signs of spring. It was peaceful here, and Elon was starting to see just how much he had been missing in his frantic chase for success. The garden, the quiet mornings, the time with his children, it was all a stark contrast to the world he had left behind. Do you ever think about what the future looks like for us? Jenna asked, breaking the silence. Elon stopped and turned to her, his eyes thoughtful. All the time, he said. I thought the future was all about achieving, but now, I'm realizing that it's not just about what we achieve. It's about how we live. About how we grow. Jenna smiled softly, squeezing his hand. I think you're starting to understand what really matters. He nodded slowly, a sense of peace washing over him. I don't want to keep running. I don't want to be in a race anymore. That afternoon, Elon took a long walk by himself. He passed by his old office space, now empty and unused. It was strange to think of that place where so many of his dreams had taken shape. So many long nights spent strategizing, building, achieving. Yet now, that space felt distant, disconnected from who he was becoming. But as he walked through the quiet, sunlit streets, he began to wonder, was it possible to do both? To build something meaningful, to create impact, without sacrificing the things that truly mattered? His family, his well-being, his ability to just be present, could he still make a difference in the world while holding on to those values? A few days later, Elon sat in a small, intimate meeting with a group of like-minded individuals. They were all entrepreneurs, former business leaders, and philanthropists. This wasn't a boardroom full of cold suits, it was a room of people who had each experienced the highs and lows of success, people who understood the toll it took. And yet, they were all here, gathered together to talk about something new, how to use their wealth and influence to make meaningful, lasting changes in the world, not just through technology but through the lives they touched. For the first time in a long while, Elon felt truly inspired. These people weren't just focused on the next big innovation, they were thinking about community, about social impact, about creating a better world for future generations. After the meeting, as Elon walked with his new colleagues, he felt a shift inside him. This is it, he thought. This is how I can make a difference now. Not by building another rocket or car, but by helping to build something more human. Something more connected. One of the women, Maria, had been listening to him speak and then said, "You know, Elon, you've already achieved a lot. But now, the real challenge is building relationships. We have the chance to shape the future, not by making another product, but by changing the way people live, by supporting each other, by giving people the tools they need to thrive, not just survive." Her words resonated deeply with him. The idea that success could be about helping others instead of outpacing them, it was a new way of thinking, a new way of living. The next few weeks became a journey of experimentation. Elon started working with several charitable organizations focused on education, sustainable energy, and mental health. These weren't projects designed for fame or recognition, but rather initiatives that could create real, tangible change in communities around the world. Through these ventures, Elon found a new sense of purpose, one that was grounded in service. For the first time, he wasn't measuring success by the number of launches, the number of cars sold, or the technological advances. Instead, he measured it by the impact on the lives of people he could reach. One evening, Elon and Jenna sat together on the couch, the kids playing quietly in the next room. Elon looked at Jenna, his eyes reflecting a new sense of contentment. "I feel like I'm beginning to understand what you've been telling me all along," he said softly. "Success isn't about what we can build. It's about what we can give." Jenna smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I'm so proud of you, Elon. You've come so far." Despite the peace he had found, there were moments when Elon still felt the tug of his old life. The long hours, the intensity, the constant need to push forward. But these moments were growing fewer, and the clarity he had been searching for was becoming more and more apparent. He was learning that his identity wasn't tied to his companies or the world he had created. It wasn't about being the billionaire entrepreneur, it was about being a father, a husband, and a man committed to living a life with purpose. It wasn't just about leaving a legacy, it was about being present for those who mattered most. One morning, as Elon was sitting at the kitchen table, X came in with a drawing in hand. The boy handed it to him, his eyes filled with excitement. "Look, Dad. I made this for you," he said, holding out the paper. Elon took the drawing, a simple sketch of their family, with Elon holding a rocket and X flying beside him. It was innocent, sweet, and full of love. Elon looked at the drawing, his heart swelling with emotion. For all the dreams he had chased in the past, this was the one that mattered most. Not Mars, not the next innovation, but his family. His children. His legacy was not just in the companies he had built or the projects he had launched, it was in these small moments, in the life he was creating right here, right now. "I love it, X," Elon said, pulling his son into a hug. "This is the best gift I could ever ask for." In the following months, Elon continued to devote himself to causes close to his heart. The projects he embarked on were no longer about changing the world in the way he once envisioned, but rather about improving lives, about creating hope where it was needed most. He didn't need to be a part of every decision, every big project. He had learned that true impact didn't always come from being on the front lines, it came from supporting the right causes, from empowering others, and from making a difference in ways that didn't require a stage or spotlight. And as the months passed, Elon realized something profound: he was no longer seeking validation or success through external achievements. His true success was found in the relationships he had rebuilt, in the life he was now living, and in the legacy of love he would leave behind. The sky had turned a soft shade of pink as Elon and Jenna sat together on the porch of their home, sipping coffee and watching the world wake up around them. The past few months had been a whirlwind of change, but in many ways, it felt like they were finally coming up for air. The intensity that had once defined Elon's life, his relentless drive to build and create, had shifted into something quieter, something more meaningful. But peace was a fleeting feeling, one that never lasted long for Elon. His mind was still constantly racing, still seeking new ways to contribute, to make an impact. The clarity he'd found was real, but the question of what next lingered in the back of his mind like a distant hum. "You seem pensive this morning," Jenna observed, looking up from her cup. "What's on your mind?" Elon gazed out across the landscape, his thoughts drifting to the conversations he'd had over the past week. He had been speaking with a small group of young innovators, entrepreneurs, scientists, and visionaries, who were passionate about creating solutions for environmental sustainability. They had reached out to him for guidance, asking for his insights on how to approach the massive challenges facing the planet. It was an opportunity he hadn't anticipated, but one that felt right. "I'm thinking about the future again," Elon said quietly. "I don't want to just fade into the background. I don't want to lose this drive that's been a part of me for so long. But I also don't want to go back to where I was, constantly chasing something without really living." Jenna set down her cup, her expression softening. "It's not an easy balance, I know. But maybe it's time to embrace a new kind of challenge. Something that feels less like a race and more like a journey." Elon nodded slowly, appreciating her perspective. He had spent his life breaking through barriers, creating the impossible. But now, he was starting to realize that the most fulfilling challenges didn't always come in the form of grand, world-changing projects. Sometimes, they came in the quiet moments of self-reflection, in the relationships you nurtured, and in the ways you grew as a person. That afternoon, Elon joined a virtual meeting with the group of young innovators he had been speaking with. They were all eager to hear his thoughts on the future of clean energy and sustainability. He could see their passion and enthusiasm on the screen, each of them driven by a deep sense of purpose. "Mr. Musk," one of them said, "your work with Tesla and SpaceX has changed the world. But now, we're looking to solve a new set of problems. How can we use technology to create a more sustainable future for everyone?" Elon sat back in his chair, taking a moment to think. His mind immediately began to race, not with the usual pressure, but with a sense of excitement. Here was an opportunity to channel his knowledge, his experience, into something that aligned with the values he had been cultivating. It wasn't about building the next big product, it was about finding real solutions that could help make the world a better place for future generations. "First, we have to shift our thinking," Elon began. "Sustainability isn't just about reducing emissions, it's about rethinking how we live, how we consume, and how we interact with our planet. Renewable energy, electric vehicles, and sustainable agriculture, all of these things are important, but they need to work together. The real challenge is creating a world where everything is interconnected in a way that works for the planet, not against it." The young innovators listened intently, hanging on to every word. Elon's passion, despite the years of being at the forefront of technological advancement, was still as strong as ever. He realized, then, that this was the kind of challenge he could embrace, one that combined his experience with his new sense of purpose. A few weeks later, Elon found himself in a remote village in Africa, meeting with local leaders, environmental activists, and business leaders who were working together to find sustainable solutions for energy access in underserved communities. The visit was part of a larger initiative he had recently become involved in, a project aimed at bringing solar power and other renewable energy resources to areas where traditional power grids were inaccessible. The people he met with were resourceful, passionate, and determined, but they lacked the infrastructure and support to make their ideas a reality. The challenge was overwhelming, but the potential for impact was undeniable. Elon was struck by how different this kind of work was from the world he had come from. There were no flashy presentations, no cutting-edge technologies. It was raw, grassroots innovation driven by necessity. As he toured the small solar-powered systems that had already been set up in a few homes, he felt a deep sense of responsibility. This wasn't about being the hero of the story. It was about amplifying the voices of the people who had been working tirelessly, often without recognition or support. These were the true innovators, and it was his job to help elevate their efforts. Later that evening, Elon sat with Jenna over a quiet dinner, reflecting on the day. The experiences he had in Africa were eye-opening. He had seen firsthand the struggles people faced when it came to accessing clean, affordable energy. But he had also seen the hope in their eyes, the drive to improve their communities, to create a better future. "I think I've found the kind of challenge I've been searching for," Elon said, his voice filled with quiet determination. "It's not about being at the top of the tech world anymore. It's about helping people, really helping them." Jenna smiled, her eyes warm with pride. "I'm glad to hear you say that. You've always had the ability to change the world, but now, you're learning how to change it in the most meaningful way possible." Despite the newfound clarity, the road ahead wasn't easy. There were moments when Elon doubted himself, when the weight of the world's problems seemed too much to bear. But he was learning to approach these challenges with a new mindset, one that wasn't driven by ego or the need for recognition, but by a genuine desire to make a difference. He had learned to slow down, to listen, to see the potential in people and ideas that he once might have overlooked. His past had been filled with moments of triumph and failure, but now, he was finding fulfillment in the everyday moments of connection, the conversations with the young innovators, the meetings with community leaders, the small acts of kindness that had once felt trivial but now seemed profound. Months passed, and Elon's new journey continued to unfold. He traveled to more countries, met with more people, and found ways to invest in initiatives that had the potential to make real, lasting change. But it wasn't just about the work anymore, it was about the people. It was about relationships, growth, and creating a future that was better for everyone, not just for a select few. One evening, as he sat on the porch again, watching the sunset with Jenna, Elon realized how far he had come. He had started this journey looking for answers, but now, he understood that the answers weren't something you could find in a single moment, they were something you built over time, with intention, with purpose. "Do you ever think about how much has changed?" Elon asked Jenna, his voice soft. Jenna nodded. "I do. But I think the most important thing is that you're finally at peace with it. You're no longer chasing something outside of yourself. You're learning to live in the moment and to give of yourself in ways that truly matter." Elon smiled, his heart light. He had found his path, and it was leading him somewhere beautiful. The morning sun had already risen, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Elon stood by the window, gazing out at the garden that had become his sanctuary. The once chaotic and unrelenting world of business, space exploration, and technological innovation now felt distant, almost like a past life. It was hard to believe how far he had come. The journey that had started with the overwhelming drive to succeed, to change the world, had slowly but surely transformed into something more. For so long, Elon had been consumed by the need to do more, be more, and leave a lasting legacy. But as he stood there, feeling the warmth of the sun on his face, he realized that the real legacy he was creating wasn't in the companies he had built or the products he had developed. It was in the lives he had touched, the connections he had made, and the peace he had found within himself. In the years since stepping away from the high-powered world he had once known, Elon had discovered the importance of presence, the power of truly being there for the people who mattered most. His children, his friends, his family, these were the relationships that had grounded him, helped him see the world in a new light. "Ready for today?" Jenna's voice broke through his thoughts, and he turned to see her standing in the doorway, a soft smile on her face. Elon smiled back, feeling a sense of gratitude he hadn't fully appreciated before. "I think so. It's going to be a day for reflection." The day had come, his first public speech since stepping back from the spotlight. It wasn't a presentation about rockets, electric cars, or the future of space travel. It wasn't about unveiling a new product or innovation. Instead, he had been invited to speak at a global summit on sustainability and the future of the planet. His message this time wasn't about how to change the world, but why we should, all of us, together. The event was held in a grand hall, filled with thousands of people from all walks of life, scientists, activists, educators, business leaders, and students. The buzz in the air was palpable, the energy vibrant as attendees gathered to hear the latest in environmental efforts, clean energy advancements, and social change. Elon's heart raced slightly as he sat backstage, knowing that for the first time in years, the words he would speak wouldn't be about technology or innovation, they would be about human connection and shared responsibility. When his name was called, Elon took a deep breath. As he walked onto the stage, a wave of nostalgia swept over him. This had been his world for so long, and yet, it felt entirely new. He wasn't here to prove anything. He wasn't here to be the hero or the genius. He was simply here to share what he had learned in his own journey, a journey that had led him to a place of understanding and peace. The applause died down, and Elon stood at the podium, looking out at the sea of faces before him. He could feel the weight of their expectations, but this time, it didn't feel burdensome. He was no longer trying to fulfill anyone's idea of success. Instead, he was there to speak from his heart. "Good morning," Elon began, his voice calm but confident. "It's an honor to be here today, not as a CEO, a founder, or an inventor, but simply as a person who has learned the importance of listening. Listening to the people around us. Listening to the planet. Listening to ourselves." The crowd fell silent, the room hanging on his every word. "For most of my life," he continued, "I chased after the big ideas. The grand visions. The future. I believed that success was about building the next big thing, achieving the impossible. And for a time, that worked. But somewhere along the way, I realized that what I was building wasn't necessarily the future I wanted. I was building a world that was disconnected, one that valued speed over connection, achievement over understanding." He paused for a moment, letting the weight of his words settle in. "It wasn't until I took a step back, until I spent time with my family, my children, and the people who truly mattered, that I realized success isn't about the product we create or the company we run. Success is about the relationships we build, the lives we touch, and the impact we have on those around us." There was a shift in the room. People shifted in their seats, some nodding in agreement, others taking notes. Elon could see the change in their expressions, the recognition that this message wasn't just about him. It was about all of them. About all of us. Right now, the world faces some of its greatest challenges. Climate change, inequality, and a lack of access to basic resources. We cannot solve these problems in isolation. We need each other. We need to rethink the way we live, how we consume, and how we treat our planet. It's not about technology alone. It's about compassion. It's about working together, with empathy, to create a future that works for everyone, not just the few. The room was completely still, the air thick with anticipation. "I've spent my life trying to build a better future," Elon concluded, his voice steady and resolute. "But now, I realize that the true future is not something we build. It's something we live. It's something we create together. And it starts with how we treat one another, how we connect, and how we invest in our communities and our planet." As he finished speaking, there was a moment of silence. Then, the audience erupted into applause. Not just polite clapping, but a genuine outpouring of appreciation, the kind of applause that comes from recognition, not of a person, but of a shared truth. Elon stepped off the stage, feeling a sense of fulfillment he hadn't known in years. It wasn't the applause that mattered, it was the feeling of having shared something real, something that could truly change the way people thought about the future. Later that night, as Elon sat quietly with Jenna, their children playing nearby, he reflected on what had just happened. He had shared a new vision, one that wasn't about being at the top, but about being part of something bigger. A vision where success was measured not by the accolades or the groundbreaking technologies, but by the impact on people's lives. "This feels right," Elon said, his voice soft as he looked at Jenna. "This is what I've been searching for." Jenna smiled, squeezing his hand. "I'm so proud of you, Elon. You found your peace." Elon nodded, feeling the weight of her words settle in. It wasn't about the relentless pursuit of more anymore. It was about finding meaning in the moments, in the relationships, and in the quiet knowledge that he had done the best he could. He had given everything he had, not for a legacy of products or inventions, but for a legacy of humanity. And in that moment, Elon Musk understood that true success wasn't about what he could build. It was about what he could create with others, what he could nurture, what he could help grow, and what he could leave behind for the world. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?